In the midst of Japan's golden years, Subaru gave the world the 22B, a striking, limited production, street-legal version of their WRC rally car. Most are now sitting in museums as priceless artifacts, so enthusiasts have now been modifying this instead. Clues of motorsport influence are all over, the most period of these being a water spray nozzle over the intercooler. Cooling intake attempts to maintain power in the wake of grueling rally conditions. This is the first two-door STI ever made, built to order, and never sold in North America.
My name is Jordan, and this is my 1997 version 3 STI Type R. So the initial plan with this car when I bought it was I was looking for another flip car. I wanted to sell it to the States once it was legal because following the trends of all the rare JDM cars, we see how much they appreciate in value. After owning the car, I started liking it too much. And especially when I swapped in the 2.5 liter motor and started going further and further away from stock, I realized I couldn't sell the car and I needed to keep this car for life.
Welcome back to Roads Untraveled. Here I am driving one of the most hardcore Impreza STIs Subaru ever made. This is a 1997 Subaru Impreza STI Type R version 3. Now Subaru nerds already know this car. You guys are probably already smiling ear to ear at what a unicorn this car is and how closely this car lies behind the 22B in terms of like the hierarchy of STIs in the universe. Also, before we get started, I just want to say I find it very fitting that I am driving a 90s Subaru on a very rainy, wet day here in beautiful British Columbia, allegedly. It just feels very fitting. I love STIs. Generally speaking, I love the way they drive, especially I love the way they sound. You guys know as well as anybody how much weight the GC8, which is this chassis, this generation of STI, how much weight the GC8 carries in the STI community, right? It doesn't have power steering at the moment, which is why you could probably notice flexing a little bit more, going in and out of the corners. Definitely quite the beast. And let me just say, Jordan's done it right, you guys. If you want to learn anything, people always ask me, you know, if you've got a budget, you import a car from Japan, what's the first mod you should do? Tires. It's literally the one thing in between your vehicle and the road, and that's what's ultimately going to save you from either understeering or oversteering into a ditch or off the road or into a tree, something that you do not want to happen ever. More than just a safety thing, it'll just make you feel the chassis more. You get to actually feel the way the weight transfers through the chassis itself, and then maybe if you're really dialing your car in, you can kind of feel where the flex is and where you need chassis bracing. So, Jordan doesn't really know how much power this is making. I mean, this car weighs around 2,800 pounds, which is pretty much the sweet spot for any 90s JDM car. Very light. I'd say this has around 300 wheel. Oh man, this is alive. This is alive.
I made a post in a local automotive group saying in search of another Subaru project because I always wrenched on, you know, classic broken Subarus. Someone locally told me that they had a JDM 2.5 RS for sale. So I messaged them and I was like, that doesn't exist. I didn't say that. But I was like, is it a turbo or a non-turbo? And they said it's a turbo. I said, is it a WRX or an STI? They said it's an STI. I said, okay, can I come check it out? And conveniently, they were only like 10 minutes from my house, and we live in a pretty small town, so that's very slim odds. And the car had been blown up, sitting in his parents' garage for 2 years, and he just didn't really know what to do with it. So took a look at the car, found out it was confirmed a Type R after checking the VINs and such, which the owner didn't know. Sorry. And bought it up for a good deal and swapped in a 2011 STI bottom end, so a stock EJ257 that was a pretty low K one. Modified the heads from 47cc to 51cc with a 1.1 millimeter Cosworth head gasket to slightly lower the compression, making it effectively 8.29 to 1. So I got an Apexi Power FC ECU because the stock ECUs are not tunable. After doing my ghetto street tune, which it drove super fun on, but the car had some problems I wasn't aware about at the time. It had a leaking turbo inlet, which isn't the end of the world, but it was bringing in unmetered air. And one of the more notable things was the up pipe was cracked literally all the way around. So it wasn't feeding exhaust completely into the turbo, so it wouldn't even hit full boost in first or second gear. On its sketchy street tune, leaking turbo inlet, not full boost in first and second, it pulled on a 2014 Challenger RT up to about 100. Well, felt good with the shitty little Subaru. Oh yeah, I'm not supposed to swear maybe, who knows. The bottom end only had 30,000 K on it, the heads were fully rebuilt. A buddy of mine had a car that had been ridden off and it was in a local scrap yard. So the turbo was a TD05 16G turbo that they sold to me for a relatively good deal. Thinking I could put that on the car and get it tuned, I talked to an actual tuner this time that wasn't just my buddy, who did put a good tune on it nonetheless, but I wanted to get a little more serious about it. And when I talked to the tuner, he pretty much said, your injectors aren't gonna feed that turbo. And I was like, how about low boost? And he didn't want to touch it, which I understand for the reliability's sake. So then I realized I was going to need bigger injectors, a bigger intercooler to keep up with the turbo. And with the bigger injectors, I was gonna switch to top feed injectors rather than side feed, so I needed conversion rails. And then the slippery slope just started taking place.
Okay, so if you are new to the show, you might not know that we have a store called shop.roadsuntraveled.com. Don't click away yet. And we've got really cool engine code jet tags that we designed and made up ourselves. And we've got the EJ20, EJ25, a bunch of other engine codes up there. Whether you're into RX-7s, I think we've got 30 designs, you name it. So check out the link is in the description. I'm kind of very hesitant to say this, but I think this is maybe not the best STI I've ever driven in terms of like precision. I'd say, I mean, a new STI would probably smoke this around a track still, but this is the most fun I've ever had driving an STI. Let's get it real, you guys. Seriously, if you stick this short a shifter and open wastegate, this is one of those bucket list cars though. If you're into Japanese 90s cars, this has to be a bucket list car for you, I'm telling you. I also love this accordion shift boot here that is factory to this car and this era of GC8s. This little charm here, you keep whatever's in the car. Certain things that just come with a car from Japan, you keep. So this was from Japan and now it's in the car living here in North America. He's got a fire extinguisher there because you never know. Like, I'm pushing this car way beyond what I initially thought I was going to be able to with a soaking wet road underneath, you know? This requires some muscle to drive. Like, it's not a simple driving car. You've really got to be careful with your inputs with this car, but I love how small this generation STI is. I think this is probably my favorite generation STI. I love blob eyes, the way those look, I think the best, but the GC8 is a classic. So if this was an OEM Type R version 3, you would have, first off, a 5-speed, which this does not. This has been swapped to a 6-speed. Great upgrade. It would rev to 8,000 RPM, which technically it can because of the modifications that Jordan's done. He's not finished tuning it though. So that's the thing. We might come back to this vehicle actually later this summer, and I might have like, 50 more horsepower or so and actually rev fully to 8,000 RPM. Just pretty insane for a Subaru, for a boxer engine that's not a Porsche. That's pretty great. But so that's what you would get. You get the 8,000 RPM red line. You get a much tighter steering rack. One of the tightest steering racks ever fitted in an STI. I believe it's a 13-to-1 ratio versus the 15-to-1. And my God, is it a blast to drive. The chassis feels very tight. There's not a hint of understeer, and I think honestly that has a lot to do with the tire setup. Little bit of torque steer at lower speeds. And a road like this, all to myself. There's literally no one on this road. This is unbelievable.
I got an external wastegate up pipe from Shibakov Fabrications in Russia. They do custom stuff because none of the North American up pipes fit with external wastegates on the JDMs. I took the 6-speed transmission out of the Bug-Eye STI because I wanted a 6-speed, and when you can take it out of your own parts car, it works pretty well that way. I was hoping I wouldn't have to buy a clutch, but it was a stock clutch, so I put an ACT HD clutch in it. All RAs came with a limited slip diff. Some non-RAs also came with a limited slip diff. But the unfortunate thing about this 6-speed transmission, the only downfall about it is factory, this car had a 5-speed with a driver-controlled center differential, which is known as the DCCD in the Subaru world. So it had a 65% rear bias, and you could adjust it up to 50-50 and literally lock the center diff. So unfortunately, this has lost that stock feature, but I plan on getting the DCCD in the near future. So for brakes, I'm rocking Brembos off of an 04 STI that I refinished myself in the OEM Sonic Blue body color. We're running StopTech Street Performance pads, new OEM Brembo rotors with titanium brake pad shims in the front, as well as stainless steel brake lines in all 4 corners. For the wheels, we're running 05 BBS wheels, so they're an 8 wide rather than a 7.5, but with that being said, they're also a 5x114.3. So for the tire, I recently, within the last week or two, got the Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's, and I'm absolutely blown away with how well they perform.
Out of any generation STI that I've driven, well, I've also never driven a Subaru rally car, obviously, but I would say this feels like it has the most rally pedigree feeling brought to the road. I think this generation is the closest you'll ever get, A, to driving a 22B, and B, just to driving a WRC car in general. I think it has so much good pedigree here that really shines through. It really does. When you apply throttle on exit, I don't know if you guys can see, but like the steering wheel literally wants to turn more. Instead of understeering and straightening out automatically, it literally wants to rotate more the more throttle you give it on exit. The car that comes with power steering though, and then doesn't have power steering now, definitely feels odd. Like I would rather drive it with the power steering. Just throwing that out there, it does feel odd, but like it comes alive, and you could feel it like pull out of corners a lot differently, which is pretty cool.
If I could pick a number off the top of my head as to how much research I've put into Subarus in general and random JDM cars, a random number I'd pick would be probably somewhere around 3,000 hours, but I honestly have no idea. It's way too much time, as my girlfriend would agree with when I ignore her and look up Subarus. I'd like to thank everyone who's put any ounce of time or work into this car, because I've had a lot of very close friends and even people I don't know as well, like help me with information, help me with parts I need, help me with work. It's really a community spirit building a car like this, and I'm glad we have such a good car community. For me, comparing the GC8 to the modern STIs, I do honestly really like the new cars, but they're not for me. You're pretty much just getting a bigger, heavier car with the same power plant. So you can pay a little more money for the refined Subaru luxuries that aren't quite luxuries, or you can start with the 90s crap box and start throwing parts on it for the same price and have a little more fun.
There was one car to wake up the neighbors and wake up the wilderness out here, scare the children in their sleep. It's a mean, mean GC8. Yeah. Yep, okay, this is one of the greats. This car right here belongs with the FDRX7. It belongs with the NSX, dare I say. It belongs with the Supras of the world, of this JDM 90s period. It really does. It holds up in every aspect. Sure, it starts life as a four-door sedan that any other non-car person would look at and say, it's just another Subaru. But it's not. The GC8 is not. There is something special coming through the fabric of this car's chassis that you will not feel in most other cars nowadays. You just won't feel. That is something that is lost and is never coming back. Sad to say, but this era of vehicles, the sweet spot, has come and gone. But the good thing is these will be legal to import for you Americans very soon. You can get your hands on your very own GC8 Impreza STI after us Canadians have had our fun. Thanks guys for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. You can follow me on Instagram at Roads Untraveled to keep up to date with what we're shooting on a day-to-day basis. We're going to be doing a little bit of traveling this summer and hopefully heading back down to California next winter, or Texas maybe, I don't know. We'll see you guys next time.